Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And friends, this evening, I don't have a screen up as of right now. Vanessa Beeley, we consider her a friend of ours. She is on the ground in Syria. And I reached out to her earlier today if she could let me know any information she is seeing on the ground there in Syria that would kind of give us an idea of what's going on. And she sent to me a post by Elijah. He's a journalist, Elijah Magnier. If you look him up on Twitter there, you will see that he is the chief international, Al-Rai, chief international veteran war correspondent for terrorism and CT analyst for Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, and more, moving between the Middle East, London, Italy, and Brussels. So he is a veteran journalist, and the information that he is sharing that Vanessa sent to me, I'm going to read to you guys specifically because I think it's important that we get this out to the world, that we get this information going forward, because what he is sharing here are multiple points. Let me just see how many he's actually put in here. I think it's like 10, 9, 10, let's see, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 points that he discusses that are happening in real time. Now, I got this from Vanessa about 50 minutes ago, and in here we're going to find out that he is saying that we are about within the next 10 hours of a strike. Now, one point he says that, another point he says within the next 2 days. So let me get right into this so that you can see exactly what's going on. It says in a few moments, he says, we'll share some information about the forthcoming war in Syria. Number one, the US-EU war on Syria is expected in the next 10 hours, according to sources in Syria close to decision makers. All Syrian troops were ordered to empty their barracks and keep 5% presence only. Number two, the USA and EU may target, as expected, the Syrian Air Force, many dislocated and others spread but not flying, the Central for Command and Control and all radars known anti-air missile Ministry of Defense, Presidential Palace, and other sensitive Syrian bases. So I'll pause here for a moment as this is point number 2 there. It's letting us know what the US is going and the EU is going to target inside of Syria. And so again, the air bases, they won't target flying planes, but air bases, the anti-missile defense shields, also the radars, the presidential palace, and other sensitive Syrian bases. They're basically going to try to wipe out the entire Syrian military in this campaign. Number 3, the USA and EU are drawing the attention to the gathering of forces in the Mediterranean, but information to the Syrian command confirmed gathering of forces in preparation for strike are expected coming from Al-Tanf, Al-Hasaq, Jordan, Turkey, and from the sea. I said to you guys, Turkey was behind this as well, not just the US. So strikes will be coming from Jordan and Turkey. If they're coming from Jordan, it shows that Germany will be involved because Germany moved all of their aircraft from the Incirlik Air Base to Germany. So let's don't forget about that. Number 4, Russia is hassling foreign warships coming closer to opposite the Syrian coast to inform all these that this is a Russian operational area. However, this Russian show of force doesn't change much because missiles can be launched from afar. Okay. Number 5, Russia will deal with Fred cruise missiles, but not expected to bring down a large number. Impossible for any superpower, no matter how many anti-air missiles are deployed over a large territory like Syria, coming from intensive firepower, USA and EU, can they take these down? Last part was my statement there. So Russia will take and respond to a certain types of missiles coming in, and they're expected to try to bring them down, but they will not be able to bring them all down because no doubt it will be overwhelming to their forces. Number 6, Iran informed Russia that any Israeli intervention means an Iranian direct involvement in this war under the agreement of defense with Syria. Putin informed Netanyahu of the Iranian intentions. So Iran will not get involved in the conflict at all as long as Israel stays out of the conflict. Khamenei met with the leadership, this is under the same part, number 6, of the Iranian Guard and Missile Force units leaders. Number 7, it is clear that the USA and EU are not waiting for UN decision or approval in Syria. Leadership believes the UN meeting served for stacking forces to gather their units and prepare their bank of objectives. Number 8, the USA and Saudi Arabia are very hurt of what happened in Ghouta. Nothing to do with the fake chemical attack, the journalist writes, but due to an end of 20 to 30,000 jihadists shipped to the north of Syria. These were the hope of the US and the Saudis to keep the menace on Damascus. Russia destroyed this hope. Number 9, if this forthcoming battle on Syria lasts only one night and day with hundreds of missiles, then it is okay. But if it lasts more than 2 days, then the situation may go towards a wider, unexpected confrontation. Data Qunetra is mentioned in this particular post of number 9. Hang on one second. He also goes on to say in post number, let's see, we're going on number 10. He says, I believe Russia can't stand alone against this coalition because it is not looking for a wider war, World War III, puts in brackets. And the attack is not on Russian territory. However, USA, EU may attack tonight or tomorrow night. Attacking forces will try to destroy the Syrian army. However, in 2013, the Syrian army was about to be defeated. In 2015, the Syrian army was cornered in main cities and retrieved from most rural areas. Those who rebuild the Syrian army and injected 12 to 20,000 men expressed their readiness to inject 120,000 men if necessary. The more Donald Trump is willing to destroy Iran's ally, the more influence Tehran will enjoy in replacing the vacuum needed in Syria. So a secular, non-jihadist government can prevail in the Levant, and Takfiri and their sponsors are defeated. And that was the end of number 12. I actually read it without saying number 12. Friends, it's not looking good. What I find interesting, though, is that Russia will not try to really directly engage the U.S. They know the targets that are going to be targeted. No doubt the U.S. has made this information known to Russia. Russia, in turn, has made this information known to the Syrian government. The Syrian government has made moves to try to protect as much of its force as it possibly can. But it is obvious that the U.S. will destroy everything that there is concerning the Syrian military in this next move. Their air bases, their warplanes, those that are not stationed with Russian planes, maybe even those as well, that could also drag Russia into a broader conflict. According to the journalist Elijah Magnier, The only way Russia would really get drawn into the conflict is if the war goes on for longer than 2 days. Or as the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, has put it, and others have put it in Russia, if their military is killed as a result of the U.S. coalition airstrikes, then Russia would engage. Will this be a third world war averted, or will it actually end up being a third world war? The journalist seems to indicate that Russia right now is standing alone. No doubt Iran was probably warned by the U.S. that if they get involved in the war, they will automatically suffer the same fate immediately. Iran, no doubt, will stay out of the war because we know that the Syrian government has loaded private planes, as we mentioned earlier, and has sent them to Iran. We'll just have to monitor to see what happens next, friends. We know that it seems it's pretty imminent that an attack on Syria is definitely going to transpire either tonight or by tomorrow night, more than likely the latest. I don't see anything turning around. And as Elijah pointed out in the post that we have here, that it wasn't about a staged chemical weapons attack. It is all about the fact they've lost their fighting force that has been terrorizing Damascus for the last 7 years. I can certainly believe that to be so. I've been there on the Syrian border there. I have watched the fighting firsthand. I've seen the bombs going off steadily, attacking one another, etc., on multiple occasions. And I have watched the entire countryside from Quneitra and on over to Damascus, just totally decimated by this war. I'll say it now and I'll say it again. And I think this is what's really important to me when it comes to this war. If we could just get the American and European leaders to recognize that we are at the verge of fulfilling Isaiah 17. If they take Damascus down, and I know the U.S. is pretty good about trying to use their precision-guided weapons to avoid civilian casualties, but I'm afraid it's just not going to happen. And if they try to really destroy Damascus, then we will see prophecy being fulfilled in Isaiah 17. But I do want to remind both American and I want to remind European leaders as well as Israeli leaders that may watch Israeli News Live, if they do, maybe they don't. I do want to remind them of one thing in particular in Isaiah 17. And I think for this part here, maybe we should put it up on the screen and behind us here, but I'll just read it. We know that Isaiah 17:1 says, the burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aurora will be forsaken, they shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim. They'll destroy the Syrian government, which in hand has been a fortress for the Christian community that lives in Ephraim, that lives in Syria, in Damascus. And they said, the remnant of Syria shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord. It looks to me, especially when you go into verse 4, and it shall come to pass in that day that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. If this is the hour that this passage is about to be fulfilled, not only does Damascus get destroyed and become a ruinous heap, but number 2, Ephraim, which are the children of the house of Israel, remnants of the house of Israel that are living in Damascus to this day under the fortress of Bashar al-Assad, who has been an advocate for the Christian community in Syria, will come to an end. And they will also share in the glory of the children of Israel. Now, that word in Hebrew is not so much as a glory as a wonderful thing, but as a negative connotation. In other words, they will also go into exile. But in verse 4, we find out that Jacob, which is Israel, Jacob represents not just the three tribes living in the country of the modern state of Israel, but it represents also those of America and Europe, etc., that are all parts of these tribes here. Their flesh will wax lean, which may very clearly indicate a mass loss of life. But I think the most important thing for world leaders, and if you happen to have the means to get this information, whether it be to President Trump, whether it be Theresa May of the European Union, or even Macron in France, if you have the means to get this to them, because I know they do have spiritual advisors to advise them what they think about these things in the context of biblical events, I would like to remind them of verse 10 when it gets down to this part here that is the warning about this destruction of Damascus, where he says, "For thou hast forgotten the God of thy salvation, and thou hast not been mindful of the rock of thy stronghold. Therefore, you did plant these pleasant plants of pleasantness, and did set with slips of a stranger." And this is what's going to bring about a destruction. But the only reason you destroy Damascus will be because you have forgotten the God of your salvation. And I don't know of any nation greater than America, and of course, many of the nations of the European Union, that have totally forsaken the God of their salvation. They've thrown him out of schools. He's not allowed in politics. The name of Christ is not mentioned anywhere any longer in governmental circles. And God says you do this because you forgot him. And the rock of the rock of thy stronghold, which is Christ. So he is dealing with Israel, the modern state of Israel, when he says you have forgotten the God of your salvation. And he's also dealing with the Christians when he says, and you have not been mindful of the rock of thy stronghold. Think about it before you begin to authorize the pushing of these buttons. And you seem to be so worried about the gas attack that happened, which you know who really did it. It was not Assad. But you're willing to allow more children, more women, more Christians, more Muslims, more Arabs, more Syrians, I should say, to die because you suffered defeat. Think about your actions. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. It is truly Ein Shalom. There is no peace. I'd also say this to Israeli leaders, and I know there are Israeli leaders that watch this broadcast. You have an option as well to not get involved in this any further. Will this be the one that fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah 17? I know there's enough propaganda out there. There's a lot of people out there right now that are following other alternative media sources that say that going and bombing in Syria is the right thing to do. Remember, it's a breaking of Laban's covenant between Laban and Jacob. They swore they would never cross over the Pile and Gilead to do one or the other harm. And here tonight, the United States, where many of the House of Israel are part of that military, as well as the European Union, you are willing to cross over the Mound of Gilead to do harm to your brother in violation of that covenant. Think about what you're doing. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live. Erev Tov.